A couple of weeks ago, Genshin Impact finally gave us our first teaser for Snezhnaya. And as anyone would expect, there was and honestly still is a lot of hype surrounding this reveal, as there should be. I mean, out of every region we've been through with Genshin Impact, I think it's safe to say that Snezhnaya is the single most anticipated region in the entire game. It has always had a massive presence ever since 1.0, from the first moment we started playing Genshin Impact, whether directly or indirectly. But beyond all of that, what truly gives Snezhnaya that extra layer of mystique, that edge over every single region in terms of how badly we want to explore it, is one single character: the Tsaritsa. I mean, it would not be a stretch to say that she's one of the most important characters in the entire game, arguably the single most important Archon, one of the biggest players in the story, one of the central pieces shaping the entire world of Teyvat. I mean, this is a character whose actions have affected us literally since the moment we started playing the game. And finally, in that Snezhnaya trailer Genshin Impact gave us, she was shown in all her glory. So now there's just one question we need to ask surrounding this reveal: how good a job did Genshin Impact do when it came to finally revealing the Tsaritsa? And even more importantly, how good a job did they do setting this review up? Because here is the thing. Yes, the Tsaritsa is a character, but even more than that, she is also an idea, a belief, a concept that has been tied to Genshin Impact almost since the very beginning. She's become a central figure, not just in the game's lore, but even in conversations, theories, the massive debates the community has had over the years. So does this setup leading to our eventual review actually live up to everything we've imagined about this character? That's exactly what we're going to talk about in this video. So if you're into this kind of content, make sure to leave a like and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think of the Tsaritsa's reveal? And just as importantly, the way Genshin Impact built it up. Did they absolutely nail it, or do you still have some reservations? Tell me all that and more in the comments below. And of course, don't forget to subscribe if you should be subscribed on any of my future videos. This video is sponsored by BuffBuff. Have you ever wanted to get those resources in your favorite gacha game, but really never had the right place to buy them? Maybe the in-game store is just a little too expensive. Well, that is where BuffBuff comes in. I mean, whether you're looking for a Lunites subscription, a weapon skin, or many of the numerous other items available in the Wuthering Waves shop, BuffBuff lets you get them for up to 70% of the in-game price through its self-top-up service, helping you save more of your hard-earned money while still getting everything you want in-game. And the best part is that the whole process is incredibly simple. Just select the item you want, choose your preferred payment method, whether it's the Razor Gold, your credit card, or one of the many other supported options, then tap the top-up button and you're good to go. And yes, I understand. How about security? Are we safe purchasing these things? Well, you also do not have to worry about that, because BuffBuff is an officially certified game top-up platform with over 150 Trustpilot reviews and 700 plus positive user reviews, making it a trusted place for all your gamer spending. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in my description below, start saving on your next top up, and get those resources you've been waiting for all this while. Once again, thank you BuffBuff for sponsoring this video, and now let's get into it. See, I believe the Tsaritsa, more than any other character in the entirety of Genshin Impact, is the character who has been put in the most difficult situation, especially from a design standpoint. I mean, like I said at the start of this video, the amount of focus that has always been placed on this character has been absolutely immense. Because what Genshin Impact chose to do with her wasn't simply to make her a character we occasionally heard about or reference from time to time, like the Shades or the Heavenly Principles. No. Instead, the game turned the Tsaritsa into a figure, a looming presence, a threat whose influence could be felt every single time the Fatui appeared on screen. And even more importantly, despite the fact that until recently, we had never actually seen anything about her, the game still managed to continually shape our perception of who this character is, and even more so, even how she may look like. I mean, think back to the early days of the game. Whether we're talking about Signora's appearance in Mondstadt, where she openly threatened an Archon, or Chao's actions in Liyue, where he unleashed a god that nearly led to the destruction of an entire nation, or the event in Inazuma, where the Fatui fanned the flames of war by supplying weapons and delusions to both sides of the conflict, something that realistically probably resulted in thousands, if not tens of thousands of additional deaths. I mean, simply by looking at the actions of the Fatui, we naturally begin to build a very distinct image of the Tsaritsa herself. I mean, someone who is the head of these people who commit all these atrocities must be a tyrant, a psychopath even, or at the very least, someone who is plainly evil, someone with no regard for human life, someone willing to say or do absolutely anything to achieve their goals. And honestly, it wasn't hard to picture a character like that. I mean, the image that comes to mind is someone like Novara from Wuthering Waves if you gave her an ice aesthetic, someone who is always smiling, always scheming, someone with an unsettling mix of childishness and calculated malice that immediately tells you that this is not a person to be taken lightly. But then fast forward to the Winter Knight Lazo trailer and everything changes. I mean, that trailer completely reshaped our perception of the Tsaritsa, because before then, with the exception of Tartaglia, our view of the Fatui Harbingers, and by extension the Tsaritsa herself, was pretty simple. They were evil. And even Child, who as I said was an exception, still came across as more naive and battle crazy than genuinely good. But then the Winter Knights Lazo came and showed us a completely different side of this organization. I mean, the first thing we saw was a group of people coming together to mourn the death of one of their own, even though admittedly it was in their own twisted way. But even more importantly, what this trailer further showed us was that these people weren't as nearly united as we had assumed. I mean, what we thought was a single diabolical organization marching under one banner was actually a collection of wildly different individuals who just happened to share a common goal. They were anything but united. Even the hierarchy within this organization almost felt performative, as if it existed more to create the illusion of structure than anything else. First Harbinger, Fifth Harbinger, Ninth Harbinger, these titles almost didn't matter. None of these people felt like the kind of person the other would happily mess with. And every single one of these things, from a storytelling perspective, was good. Because more than anything, it added an incredible amount of nuance to what had previously felt like a very straightforward organization. And as a result, it completely changed how we viewed the Tsaritsa herself. I mean, she went from being this one-dimensional evil ruler to becoming an almost unknowable character. I mean, now after watching the trailer, you could project any personality onto her. She could be whimsical yet quietly detached like Child. She could be cold and indifferent like Sandrone. She could be hateful and resentful like Arlecchino. She could be calculating and manipulative like Pantalone. She could be downright psychopathic like Dottore. She could be an honorable leader like Capitano. Or she could be completely detached from everything happening around her like Colombina. The point is, the Winter Knights Lazo trailer dramatically expanded the possibilities. Not only did it generate an unbelievable amount of hype for Sumeru and for Genshin Impact as a whole by finally showing us the Fatui Harbingers, but it also transformed the Tsaritsa from a character we thought we understood into someone we could not predict at all. I mean, after that trailer, she could have been almost anyone and somehow it would have made sense. But here is where things get very interesting, because even though the game had now shown us that the Tsaritsa could be almost anyone, that the possibilities were practically endless, I still think there was a very specific image that both I and probably you watching this video had in your head. And I think that's because across anime as a whole, there are certain character archetypes that almost anyone who's watched enough anime can immediately picture the moments they're mentioned. And one of the most generic, even among the list of generic archetypes, is the Ice Queen. The one thing we understand the Tsaritsa to be. I mean, the image, and even more so, the personality of the Ice Queen is so deeply ingrained in my head that it's honestly difficult to imagine anything else. We've seen this archetype over and over again. The cold, calculating woman whose personality is just as icy as her abilities. The person whose emotional distance is usually the result of some tragic past. I mean, you know the character already. A picture is already forming in your head. That character who slowly opens up over time after someone, usually the male protagonist, manages to break through that frozen exterior and bring a little warmth back into her life. I mean, this is one of the most overused tropes in anime. But what is even more interesting is that it is not just the personality that is easy to picture, it is the design. The white hair, the lifeless eyes, the emotionless stare. And if she's royalty, you can probably even imagine the outfits. Something elegant and extravagant that somehow contrasts with, while also perfectly complementing her cold demeanor. Jewels all over her outfits, a pointy blue crown because, well, she's the Ice Queen. Ice is usually depicted in anime as pointy blue icicles. That's just what an Ice Queen looks like. And when it came to the Tsaritsa, especially after realizing that she fits so neatly into this anime archetype, Genshin really had its work cut out for it from, as I said at the start of this video, a design perspective. Because this wasn't just another character. This was a character who has been built up for 6 years. A character whose subordinates, the Harbingers, and whose pairs, the other Archons, had given us some of the best narratives, some of the strongest introductions, some of the greatest character moments in the entire game. I mean, everything surrounding the Tsaritsa had consistently been exceptional. So finally seeing how Genshin chose to design this 6-year-old looming figure. And well, if you came away from that review feeling just a little disappointed, I think that is a completely understandable reaction. I mean, don't get me wrong, the Tsaritsa looks good. As a Genshin character, she is designed well enough to, at the very least, stand out. But what has to be understood is that there is a reason this artist on Twitter was able to almost perfectly replicate the Tsaritsa design months before she was officially revealed. There's a reason why I could go to ChatGPT and type something as simple as create a generic anime Ice Queen who is cold and uncaring and get this image as a result. And then add in make her color scheme blue and give her the aesthetic of a royal queen and getting this. Now obviously neither image is a one-to-one recreation of the Tsaritsa's final design, but when you look at them, it is hard to deny that the resemblance is uncanny. But here's the thing, even though it's a little disappointing that a character as unbelievably hyped as the Tsaritsa ended up following such a familiar aesthetic, that by itself isn't necessarily a problem. More than anything, because this archetype can work. And a great example of this is Hiyuki from Wuthering Waves. I mean, appearance-wise, Otherwise, she's another textbook anime ice queen. White hair, cold stare, calm calculating demeanor. She fits the archetype almost perfectly. But what we also understand about this character is that she also works incredibly well within the context of her story. I mean, yes, Wuthering Waves leans into the classic tragic backstory that usually comes with this type of character, but despite that, Hyuki still feels compassionate when the story calls for it, enjoyable when the moment allows it, absolutely badass when she needs to be, and overall just a genuine fascinating character. I mean, she's someone I imagine every single Wuthering Waves player would be excited to see again once we actually go into Ashinohara. So this is proof that as generic as this archetype may be, it absolutely can work. But the real question right now is, can Genshin make this work? I mean, what has Genshin shown us so far about the kind of story the Tsaritsa could be involved in? And even more so, from everything we've experienced throughout the entire game, what can we reasonably assume will become central elements of her story? The one aspect of the story that has the potential to either make or completely break the Tsaritsa as a character. And I think the answer to all these questions comes down to one simple word: consequences. See, Genshin Impact has told all kinds of stories over the 6 years it's been in the gacha space. Some of them have been absolutely phenomenal. Stories that I'd even go as far as to call experiences in and of themselves. While others, not so much, completely forgettable. But one thing that has consistently been present in many of Genshin's biggest stories, especially those involving the most important character, is the issue of consequences, more specifically, the absence of it. And I don't think there's a better example of this than the Inazuma storyline, specifically the story surrounding A, the riding shogun. Because see, in case you've forgotten, one of the things that made going into Inazuma so compelling was just how grounded the central conflict was. I mean, Monster was about stopping a dragon from destroying a nation. Lyre was about an ancient god threatening to wipe out an entire harbor. But Inazuma was about a revolution. A revolution born from the Vision Hunt's decree, an order created to strip people of their visions. And we all understand that in Genshin Impact, visions just aren't magical objects. I mean, for adventurers, it's a means of self-defense. For workers, it's their livelihood. For artists, it's their inspiration. For many, it is a part of their very identity. So in many ways, this decree wasn't just taking away people's power, it was stripping them from their freedom. And this very decree was created and enforced by none other than the riding shogun herself. And here's the thing, as a premise, this is phenomenal. I mean, before A, we genuinely gotten along with every Archon we'd met. But this time, things were different. For the first time, the Archon of a nation wasn't our ally, she was an enemy. But what made the conflict even more compelling was the nuance behind it. I mean, this wasn't someone acting out of greed or simple malice. In fact, it was the opposite. Everything A did, she did in pursuit of eternity. In her own mind, she genuinely believed she was protecting her people. I mean, yes, her reasoning was quite stupid, but at its core, it was from a place of love. The problem, however, is that regardless of why she did it, her actions still led to death. Potentially an untold number of deaths. I mean, from the guilty to the innocent. Lives were destroyed because of decisions that ultimately trace back to her. And when you have a story like that, more than the action, more than the spectacle, more than the cutscenes, the one thing people naturally begin looking forward to is the consequences. How does this person answer for what they've done? Do they lose their life? Do they step down from power after realizing they were never fit to rule in the first place? Hell, do they at least acknowledge the full weight of their actions and dedicate the rest of their lives to making amends? How does someone atone for something on this scale? And I believe it was with Inazuma, more than any story before or after it, that the community collectively began to recognize one of the biggest weaknesses in Genshin Impact storytelling. The fact that consequences rarely seem to apply even to the characters responsible for the greatest atrocities, as long as they're playable. Because in the very next story after the Inazuma main story, we found ourselves going on what was essentially a date, eating food and taking pictures with the very person that was responsible for this war that just happened. There was no seeming hatred for her by the people that were affected by this war. In fact, it was the opposite. People were only happy to entertain her, to be of service. And like clockwork, we've seen this happen time and time again. With Arlecchino, with other playable Fatui, characters responsible for deaths of their own. Arlecchino especially, the head of the House of the Hearth, an organization that quite literally grooms children into becoming soldiers. Soldiers who, even in the current story we're playing, still continue committing atrocities. I mean, we just finished the version 6.6 story, where Pantalone and Dottore served as our primary antagonists. And what you'd come to understand upon playing the story is not only were these two flat-out enemies with no gray area or anything like that, but they were also protected by Fatui soldiers. Our actions were deterred by Fatui soldiers. Soldiers who, more than likely, were raised and molded by the House of the Heart itself. But fortunately for Arlecchino, she's a playable character. And because the story needs her to remain morally grey, we once again find ourselves with a character who faces virtually no consequences for the things she's done, or in this case, is still doing. Instead, she's presented as one of the Traveler's closest allies, one of their truest friends. So now we come back to the Cryo Archon herself, the Tsaritsa. And honestly, if you thought A's actions were already difficult to overlook, they don't even come close to what the Tsaritsa has enabled. I mean, at least with A, you could argue that she was misguided, that she genuinely didn't understand the consequences of what she was doing. But that argument doesn't work here. I mean, the Tsaritsa is a character who, through her own authority, created the Fatui and empowered them to commit just about every atrocity you can think of. And I mean every atrocity. But ask yourself this, from everything we've seen so far in previous Genshin stories, do you genuinely believe she will face any consequences? I mean, the game has already given us a glimpse of where her story seems to be heading. She is fighting against the Shades. I mean, this is likely the arc where we will finally meet and speak with the Heavenly Principles. We even see bits and pieces of her past. We see a child. We see a blank space where her husband should be. We understand fully well that they are part of the tragedy that pushed her into this path in the first place. But what about everybody else? What about all the sons and daughters she either killed or allowed to be killed? I mean, the Torii carried out horrific experiments on children under her banner. What about those children? I mean, if Genshin subverts expectations and have the Tsaritsa remain an enemy to the Traveler throughout the Snezhnaya experience, then all of this will be fine. I mean, we understand that she will face consequences, whether it is through death or any other thing that she deserves. But if the Tsaritsa eventually joins the Traveler's circle of allies, if like Arlecchino, there comes a point where she starts calling us a true friend, then I believe that more than any cosmic revelation or godly conflict she's involved in, the single biggest factor that would determine whether she's a well-written character is how the story forces her to answer for her crimes. Because in the entirety of Genshin Impact, I don't think there is a single question more important than this one. After 6 years of build-up, what are the consequences of creating the Fatui? And for me, the answer to that question may very well determine whether those 6 years of anticipation were actually worth it, but that is just my take. What do you think? Do you agree with what I've said? Do you think I've been fair in my assessment of the Tsaritsa? Do you think the question of consequences isn't nearly as important as I'm making it out to be? Tell me that in the comments below, and as always, I'll catch you in the next one.